Thank you for coming to the high-tech breakout session. This is evaluation, a key ingredient for a successful ATE proposal. It is presented through Evaluate. My name is Kristen Martens, and Evaluate is the Evaluation Resource Center at Western Michigan University, so we are an ATE center. An expanded version of this session was actually originally developed as a webinar last year in 2013 in August by Lori Wingate, the PI of our project, of our center. And so the slides in the recorded presentation are on our website, and so you can get the whole webinar if you wish. You also have a set of slides in your packet, and then there's always some changes that happen, so I'll also update the full slide deck to the conference website too. So the session is geared towards those interested in applying for a grant from the National Science Foundation's Advanced Technological Education Program, otherwise known as ATE. So raise your hand if you have a current and active ATE grant. Great. Okay, good. Raise your hand if you've previously been funded by ATE. Okay, good. And then if you've submitted an ATE proposal before, or you've been funded, and maybe haven't been funded, or you're going for your first proposal. How many people are going? Okay, good. Anybody that didn't fit into a category? So are you here just to learn about some more evaluation type things? And a lot of this information, while it's focused on ATE, can still be adapted for other funding streams. All right. So by the end of the session, we're hoping that you'll know more about the evaluative elements that should be included in a proposal and where, and also understand how evaluation can be leveraged to strengthen a proposal. So the session today it's organized by this evaluation planning checklist for NSF ATE proposals, which is in your folder. Looks like this. And it'll go step by step through this. This is available on our website for download, so you can get it there, and that's where the links will work. So there are links out to places like ATE Central. Of course, you're not going to see those links, which are embedded, but you can go there and you'll be able to get more resources. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what the ingredients are for evaluation in an ATE proposal. One of the things that we've heard from a lot of people who have served on NSF review panels is that it's really obvious when evaluation is kind of a last-minute add-in, and when you really look at the places where evaluation elements are needed to show up, you can understand how evaluating at the last minute, adding evaluation in at the last minute can really hurt your project. So here are the required contents of an NSF proposal according to the grant proposal guide, and the checks are identifying the components where evaluation would be relevant. So I'm going to show you how to mix evaluation into those sections to strengthen your proposal and increase your chances for a favorable review. So the first piece of your proposal is the cover sheet. This is automatically generated as you provide answers to questions in the FastLane system. Evaluation shows up here in the form of a box, and you'll just check it that you will be collecting information from or about human subjects as part of your project's evaluation or research efforts. For most of you, you'll need to just check the box and include your proposal status as pending. This is a place where rules really vary widely depending on your institution, but you need to know what those rules are for yourself and be aware that this will be the first spot where you're going to be looking for evaluation. Okay, so project summary. This is really just a one-page statement of your proposal's intellectual merit and broader impacts. So these are the main NSF review criteria, and there's a lot of sub-criteria also included. So you may not be able to address everything that might be relevant in this limited space of just one page, so you need to really be careful that you go for the things that are really relevant to your project. But the 15-page narrative, this is where the bulk of your proposal is. So you have a lot of ground to cover in those 15 pages, right? We all know that. The things listed here are the elements of your project description according to the ATE program solicitation. And the two pieces where evaluation really figures in prominently are results of prior NSF support and, of course, the evaluation plan. A lot of other things that you need to cover, but we're going to be focusing in on those two things because evaluation is where we're headed today. All right, so for the results of prior support, the first one, if the PI or the co-PI on the proposal has received prior funding from NSF related to the proposal, then they must start with the program description, start their program description with a section titled Results of Prior NSF Support. So basically what people are looking for here when they're reviewing is that there's evidence of the quality and effectiveness of your prior work. That's the key. So this is where evaluation results of your prior work is going to go. Keep in mind that not all evaluation results will be considered equally important by reviewers. So if you think about things like student outcomes, that's going to be much more important to list than, say, talking about website hits or satisfaction ratings, things like that. So really try to go for the important outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit more about those outcomes in a little bit. So you skip through a lot of different stuff, and that's really your idea, your dream of what your proposal will be about, what is your plan. And we're going to go down to the evaluation piece of it. So we're skipping quite a bit. But you still need to think about the rationale in the proposal from sustainability and dissemination all the way up to, all the other elements. So, the evaluation plan. First off, the program solicitation includes specific expectations for evaluation of various kinds of projects. We're not going to get into the nuances of all the different types of projects that you could do right now, but we're going to, you definitely want to read that solicitation very carefully to make sure that the information that you're providing works. But in the plan, the evaluation section is made up of 3 elements: information about your evaluator, the evaluation plan, and the integration of other aspects of your proposal. So the evaluation section of that 15-page narrative should only be 1 to 3 pages. So you have to be really succinct. The first thing you should do in your evaluation section is to identify who is going to be your evaluator, and then briefly describe their experience and expertise as it relates to this work. So when you do this, I'm talking about only like a paragraph for this section. Remember, there's 3 different things you'll list in this plan. So the ATE program solicitation specifies that the funds to support an evaluator independent of the project or center must be requested. A common question that proposers have is then, how do I find an evaluator? How do I go about that? So one of your best bets is to maybe go to other ATE PIs. You might focus on ATE centers because they have a little bit more experience and expertise. ATE Central, again, I have their flyers back in the back, so you can take one of their cards and speak with people at ATE Central. Evaluate also maintains a directory of individuals who have experience with evaluation in STEM and in community colleges. But we're about to migrate that kind of static list into a LinkedIn evaluator group, and so be looking for that. We're trying to make some changes to make it more helpful. The American Evaluation Association also maintains a national directory of evaluators, and then both of the Evaluate and the AEA directories are searchable by keyword and by region. So the links for both directories and ATE Central are included in that checklist, but again, you might have to go to the online ones on our website so you can actually get those links. You could also think about if you have a university that's near you, you might check to see if they have a research center or institute that could help you out and engage in evaluation work. The thing is that when you need to remember that all of these different sources are just going to provide leads. So just because an evaluator is in a directory or somebody has recommended that person, they may not be the right fit for your particular project. So you need to determine the person's qualifications and the fit with your project. Okay? So the second element is to describe your evaluation plan, and the bulk of your evaluation section, of course, is going to be here. So we're going to dive deeper into that. There's basically 4 elements: evaluation focus, the data collection plan, the analytical and interpretive procedures, and the reporting schedule and projected uses. So the first one, the evaluation plan, in terms of focusing the evaluation, the most important thing is to clearly align it with your project's activities and outcomes. So logic models are not required for ATE proposals, but they are required for some NSF programs. We find them to be really helpful, both for project design and evaluation planning. So a logic model is simply a graphical depiction of your program theory, what you're going to do and try to achieve in your project. So it's a tool to help you think through your project design and how evaluation can then map on top of it. So here's an example. There's lots and lots of ways to design a logic model. Some of you may be familiar with logic modeling. It can get really very complicated, in fact, as you try to show those different relationships between the program components. I'm getting some nods. It is an easy task. This is a very simple one. It's pretty basic. It's fictional. This is not a true project, but this is for the Green Energy Technology Institute, which is fictional. But let's look at some of those components, because they may be things that you're already doing in your projects or the projects you're thinking of. So in your activities column, you want to convey the main things that you're going to do with your grant dollars. Here we have workshops, lectures, and dissemination are some of the things that we would do in this fake project. It's useful to also include outputs in the model. These are tangible things that you are going to generate by your activities. So these are things that you can count and document, and that's, again, when we talked earlier about that lower hanging fruit, that you can count, like how many website hits you get, but you want to go for the further outcomes in the results of prior support if possible. But this is still good to document, don't not do it. So in this example, we have trained faculty modules in a model curriculum. The next 3 columns are focused on the outcomes. So they're going from short to long term, and instead of strictly thinking of these outcomes temporally, it may be more helpful to frame them in the type of change that you're actually looking for. So for your short-term outcomes, which are listed here, think about your project beneficiaries. They could possibly be faculty or staff, whoever that might be. What should they know or be able to do as a result of the work supported by your project? Okay, short-term outcomes. Midterm, at this level, you can show how you're meeting the need that you have identified earlier on in your proposal's rationale. So in this example, we have more students entering green energy technology careers, and employers are hiring the graduates. So what are people going to be doing differently is the key here. What will they be doing differently because of your intervention? Okay, long-term outcomes at the highest level of impact. There should be a really clear linkage to the purposes of the ATE program itself here. You may not be able to actually bring about this change on your own through your proposal or through your project if you're funded, but you should be able to determine a logical connection to the ATE program goals. And this is a good way to reinforce your project's alignment and fit with ATE. Because as you know, it's a ton of work to put together a proposal, right? You don't want to be submitting something that doesn't fit. If your project doesn't fit with ATE, and you also, on the other side, don't want to not be able to show clearly how it fits. So really think about those connections all the way down. All right. So if you want to include a logic model in your proposal, which is basically what I'm recommending, even though it's not required, you need to do this in 1 page or less. So don't take up too much room. It's really a visual communication of the salient aspects of your project and how they fit together in a cohesive package. They're also really, really useful for evaluation planning, and that's why some people really see them as falling into the evaluator's domain. A lot of people think that evaluators come up with the logic model, but in fact what we might do is help you to be able to put into this visual, graphical area how your program is working. It's a great tool for us to focus the evaluation though. So let's go through this same model and put some evaluation on top of it. So for the evaluation of your activities and outputs, plan on being able to answer questions like who you reached, what they thought about the experience with the project, what the quality or utility of the project's activities or products. So this is largely about accountability at this point. And it's important to have this stuff, but the evaluation needs to go further. For your short-term outcomes, the evaluation should determine how the project affected participants' knowledge, skills, abilities, or attitudes. And then next, the evaluation can progress to answering questions about changes in practice or behavior. So again, your evaluation may not get to the long-term outcomes, especially if you're in your first cycle of funding. So, again, that's more on the AT program goals, which we talked about earlier. So it really depends on the nature of your project. You also may not have the resources to answer all the questions that you come up with along this whole set of the logic model. So you want to make sure you prioritize what's the most important and what's realistic and best fits the stage of your project. Okay. So after you articulate the focus of the evaluation, then you're going to describe how you're going to collect data, the whole data collection plan. So what information do you need? You need to describe that, how and who will provide it, and when. This information should be clearly related to your evaluation questions, which you just did the focus on. So let's walk through an example. I'll give you a minute to take a look at this. It's an excerpt from a real proposal from an evaluation. It's not an NSF proposal, but it's also not made up. So go ahead and take a look at it. It's been shortened a little bit for this presentation. As you read, I'm going to highlight some keywords for you. Okay, the evaluation is going to use mixed methods, gathering both quantitative and qualitative data. The evaluation will be both formative and summative and address the project's merit and worth. And it's going to adhere to best practices for rigorous scientifically based research. How's that sound? Pretty good? What it doesn't do is it doesn't address those what, how, who, and when. So in fact, a lot of great buzzwords, no substance. So it's really generic and cookie cutter. And this is the type of evaluation plan that you would get if you call someone in very late. You want them to actually get an evaluation plan that's tailored to you, to support your, not to you personally. I don't like those shoes, but it's tailored to your project. Okay, let's go through another example together, and then you guys can pull out the information. So go ahead and take a read on that. Okay, I'm going to ask you a few questions. What we're going to be looking at is the what, how, who, and when. All right, so what data will be collected? What do you think? Just yell stuff out if you see stuff that you think is going to be collected. Okay, from this excerpt we can see the what will be collected is the workshop participants' feedback and evidence of application and students' knowledge and perceptions. Okay, so we're telling what. How will the data be collected? Okay, so how is surveys and interviews? Good. And then who will be providing the data? Now there's two sides to that question. It's whom will you be collecting the data from and who will be collecting the data? So you can think of it both ways. Who's providing it? Who's collecting it? Okay. So we've got from whom includes participants and students, and then who will be doing the collecting is project staff and the external evaluator. Okay, we've got both sides of that. All right, when will the data be collected? Good. So the data will be collected end of workshop, 6 months post-workshop, and then at the end of each semester. All right, so now obviously these are just 3 sentences right here of what should be a 1 to 2 page description of your evaluation. You might have 3 pages if you have graphical things like the logic model in there. The logic model could also be not part of the evaluation plan. It could be part of your project description outside of the evaluation plan, but think about that. So this is really necked down, but it's an idea of how it could be described. So those were narrative forms of the evaluation plan, very short ones. But here is another way to really use your space very well. So as an alternative way to present it, it's efficient and it's a matrix. You can see that there's the project goals on the far left. Then we have the evaluation questions that are connected with the project goals. Then there's a column for indicators, and these are pieces of information that we're going to collect. In this example, we're looking at changes in course enrollments, students' intent to pursue green tech jobs, as well as some other measures you can see. And using multiple measures, just remember, it allows for triangulation, and it will strengthen the evaluation. So it's really important that you don't just do one survey and that's your entire evaluation. You need to have the ability to triangulate. So the next column is then the methods for collecting the data, and then related to those indicators, and then the source and the timing. All right? So if you can pull out this yellow sheet in your folders, at the top I have this exact example that's on the slide right now, just typed in across the top. In the middle, I have another one of these goals, or the outcomes. So I picked the very last short-term outcome, and I just put it in there for you to think about if you want an example to think about. And then it has started with an evaluation question. So if you want to look at that one, just to think it through a little bit, try to think about indicators, methods, data sources, and timing. Or if you want to think about, maybe you're already thinking about your project and you want to just kind of write down your own and go off on your own, just take a minute. You can talk to someone next to you. You can do it on your own. Just take a minute to try to think through how that data collection matrix might work for you. Yeah, I'm hearing there's too many rows. It's just kind of open for you to try to think about. You might have a couple of the boxes you would fill in. Is it?
I was saying what we often see is that there's too many goals. A lot of projects have 15 goals.
Oh, that's a great point. So what she's saying is that often projects will have so many goals, like 15 goals. Jane Davidson, who is one of evaluation in general, she's an academic, she's an evaluation guru in my book. She says you should have 7 evaluation questions plus or minus 2. So basically it means 5 to 9, right? About that. But you could have 1 evaluation question. You could have 3 evaluation questions. No, what does she say? She says 3 to 7. So that's 1 to 9, basically, plus or minus 2. 1 to 9. You don't need a million evaluation questions. You don't want them. I was working on a project with Lori Wingate, our PI, and it was on an NSF project for another university, different funding stream, and they had 32 evaluation questions. We were not invited at the proposal stage, so we inherited this evaluation plan. It just wasn't tenable. You could not do, it had to be reworked completely. So keep it simple. Think about big goals, big questions, and then you might have indicators that feed into those questions. That's where you might branch out to more, but don't have so many large evaluation questions. That's a good point. So did anybody think through for the practice one that's in the middle that has an example? Did you think through some indicators that you might have for the extent to which community colleges have adopted or implemented a curriculum? What kind of indicators might you have?
Number.
Exactly. Hi, Jane. Yes. Yeah, you could count the number. That's pretty simple. What else could you do?
If you've posted them on the website, you could count downloads.
Yes, could. Can you think of something a little bit broader, bigger, more unwieldy and difficult? What about if you had any, maybe because of this curriculum, you had some partnerships that were formalized because people wanted to use your curriculum? So it depends on what your goals are, but you can think about it in a little bit bigger space than just counting what's easy to count, okay? Did anybody come up with their own that they've just been thinking about as we were talking? These are hard to come up with, so don't feel like you need the pressure of it, but I just wanted you to kind of try to not just listen to me all the time as I'm, lecturing, but just think it through a little bit. And they're very difficult. It takes a lot of time to come up with these. So. All right, some things to think about. Tips for data collection. A few tips. We think of it we need to think about this in terms of building a body of evidence using multiple sources, including quantitative and qualitative data, so mixed methods. It's great if you can embed data collection into the regular project activities. So if you need students to do a survey, perhaps you should give that survey in the classroom setting instead of tracking down those students later and trying to find them. Use existing data whenever possible, so really get to know your institutional research office staff. Bring them cookies and chocolate, but you should get to know those folks. And utilize existing data collection instruments if they can fit and match your needs. It'll save you a lot of time and effort in validation. Now, something that doesn't fit your needs, of course, you're not going to want to use it. It's just not going to give you good data. All right, so let's move into the third part of the evaluation plan, and that's analysis and interpretation. So this is analysis and interpretation is how you'll make sense of the data that you do collect, what sorts of comparisons will be made, and what counts as success. So they tend to get lumped together, right? Do you guys think of them as one thing? People often do, but they're really two different things. So analysis is organizing, transforming, and describing your data. Whereas interpretation is making sense of it so that conclusions can be made about the project's quality, progress, and or impact. So it's bringing it further. Interpretation requires some sort of comparison, such as with targets, past performance, national benchmarks, and other sites. In your blue notebook, you will see our very first, you're the first eyes on it, I believe, outcome of our 2014 survey for ATE, ATE folks, current grantees. So what we do also through Evaluate, and it has come before the Evaluate grant where we're at the resource centers, we have done a survey of ATE grantees. And every year we publish that. So that can help you with some of that benchmarking. So you can go to our website and try to find some things that will help. You can also contact us if you need some things. So think about that with benchmarking, that we do have the ATE annual survey. So lastly, when describing the evaluation plan, you should touch on reporting and use of the findings. One of the ATE-specific intellectual merit criteria asks if the evaluation will provide useful information to projects and others. Okay, you guys are shaking your head, you know this. It's a really important aspect to remember, and you really want to be clear about how you're going to do that, how your evaluation results will inform the project as it is being implemented. Okay, so think that through and make sure that that's there with your evaluation plan. You at least need to describe what types of reports will be developed and when and how they will be shared, basically. So keep in mind you'll need information from the evaluation for other purposes, such as annual reports to NSF, annual survey of grantees, and that's what I was just thinking of that we do, and possibly reports to advisory groups. So multitask your outcomes, your data, and your conclusions, if you can. Okay, so we know how to describe the evaluation plan, which was number 2. Now let's look at number 3. Throughout the evaluation section, you'll refer to other elements of the proposal, such as the evaluator's biosketch, the project budget, the data management plan. All of those things are also included. And we want to help you show that the evaluation is an integral aspect of your proposal, not just an add-on or an afterthought. It should be infused. So we'll address some of those other elements, but let's again look at this project description, because that's the bulk of your that's the 15 pages. That's the bulk of your proposal, right? Those are all the elements that are there, and that's where evaluation really comes in the most clearly. Okay, let's go to references. All right, so in the 15-page project description, evaluation should also be evidenced in your references. It helps demonstrate the evaluator's knowledge and competence. So it can also help show how the evaluation is grounded in and building on current knowledge and practice. If you're going to apply a specific evaluation approach or instrument, make sure that you provide citations to support its use in your context. So you're going to want to ask your evaluator to embed appropriate references in the plan and to provide you with citations that you can then put in your references for your overall project description. So for biosketches, the evaluator's biosketch should reflect his or her past experience in conducting project evaluation, but they should also be using the 2-page NSF format. You should actually include it in the supplementary documents, because the FastLane system for uploading biosketches only allows senior project personnel to upload their biosketch to the biosketch area. So the evaluator, while it's necessary, it needs to go into supplementary documents. Okay. Budget justification in the budget. So the program solicitation advises that the funds to support evaluation must be requested, and that the requested funds must match the scope of your proposed evaluative activities. Don't turn the page. All right, turn them over. Hands up. Don't look. Can I ask you a question? Okay. So this isn't very specific guidelines, is it? There's not much guidance here. It's got to match the scope of your proposed activities. All right, so on average, what percentage of ATE budgets are spent on evaluation? Raise your hand if you think it's 2%. No peeking. You're peeking. Oh! 2%, 8%, 15%, 24%. Okay, now you can peek. That one wasn't listed, was it? No. As a rule, in overall evaluation, 10% is the rule of thumb. But for ATE, the reality is 8%. So the majority of you were correct about the 8%. All right, so what goes into that budget? Time, travel, materials, and other expenses, and then institutional, indirect, or overhead costs. What does all that mean? Time, you need to think, this is a key question, how many days does the evaluator actually need to spend in order to generate the needed evaluation, deliverables, and services? So they should be able to provide an estimate of the number of those days. All right, travel. It's getting more and more expensive, and if you've been watching the news, we're going to have more fees on airline flights. So travel can really eat up a small budget. So you really need to think through what you're going to be doing, because otherwise you're going to get caught unaware. So some of the things that might happen is attending the ATE PI conference. Perhaps your evaluator may need to go there. To the high-tech conference, of course. Advisory committee meetings, and perhaps special project events. You also need to think about collecting data from participants. Will they need to travel to do that? And meeting project staff to plan the evaluation or discuss results. So think those things through and what it's going to cost you. Materials and other expenses for the evaluation. This category is things like paper for surveys, for reports, copying costs, postage. If you have incentives for your participants that's going to help you with the data collection piece of it, then you're going to need to think about that in this section. Survey hosting subscriptions. If you're doing an online survey and you need to have it hosted, there can be a fee for that. There's not typically a lot of costs in this area for evaluation, but keep it in mind. Yeah.
What kind of incentives do you see coming through?
I've worked on a lot of non-NSF, and so I can speak to that, but NSF is a little bit more difficult because there's a lot of, you have to be careful that you're doing it. Okay, for example, I don't know, we're having a validation process, which Jane and Gordon know about, with our resources and materials. We wanted to be able to give incentives to people that were helping out with this. We didn't want to give money because then we have to collect everyone's social security number. And it's a big hassle for a small incentive. We wanted to give like Amazon gift cards and things like that. But we couldn't be, because it's NSF, we couldn't be promoting any company. We got to the point where we just said, we just can't do it. We don't know a way through it. So I don't know, you could be giving out pins, or I'm not sure exactly but be careful with it. Is anybody doing incentives that can speak to that more? It's a little iffy with NSF. Yeah.
There is a way to do gift cards, and Mel Cassette knows what it is.
Well, that's nice to know. I'm going to write that down. Yeah, but in evaluation in general, I've worked on lots of evaluations where the CDC was the funder, and we gave out incentives to students. So it could be things like, frisbees and water bottles, and just almost like the things that are downstairs in our exhibit hall. That kind of stuff. Just a thank you. I'm not talking about hundreds of dollars, which you guys are getting for coming here today. So, yeah, keep that in mind and make sure you talk with your program officer and that everything's okay with what you want to do. Okay, so for the institutional and indirect overhead, this needs to be included, and the rules and policies around this issue, again, vary wildly. At Western Michigan University, our indirect rate is 50%, which is actually below the average. Sounds really high. So the rates and policies are really variant, and it's hard to give guidance here as well. But this is a possible expense for the evaluation. Okay, yeah.
If that's an external evaluator, then it doesn't apply.
Yes, it does for us.
You mean if you're working as an external?
Yes. Yes. If
Depends
we're
on who you're using, whether they're going to the school or not.
right.
It is to the colleges that tend to have this.
Yeah.
The four-year universities
Different
tend
for
to
you.
like.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So in essence, your overall project budget, you need to explain those evaluation costs, including the daily rate, time committed to the project, broken down by major tasks, and then travel materials and institutional indirect or overhead if it's applicable. All right, so our last section is the summary documents. Supplementary. You'll want to include a commitment letter from your evaluator here, demonstrating the person's individual and organizational commitment to work on the project. This is also where you'll put your evaluator's biosketch, remember, right? It's not going to go in biosketches, it's going to go here. And you must include a data management plan in the supplementary documents. So let's take a quick look at that. This slide actually comes from Rachel Bauer. She was a guest speaker in last year's webinar, and I stole her slide. I just told her about it when I came in. I said, but your name's all over it, so don't worry. So she's noting that a really important piece is that you could include the statement that no detailed plan is needed. But that statement then has to be accompanied by a very clear justification of why you don't need a data management plan. Otherwise, the 6 areas, can you guys read those fairly well? The 6 areas that you need to address are what types of data, metadata, or resources will the project create? What formats will be used to create, share, and store that data? How and where will the data be stored? How will you deal with the privacy and other sensitive data issues you may come upon? What restrictions will be placed on the reuse or redistribution of the project's data? And how will this data continue to live after project funding expires? Okay. You have it. Well, I added that one late. So I'm going to upload all of my slides. You know, you have to get these things printed ahead of time and shipped, and you're still playing with it. So I did add that slide later. And we're also recording this right now, so I'm not sure where that's going to go, but can you answer where is the recording?
It's going onto the high-tech site.
Okay. So you'll have a full slide deck that will go onto the high-tech website as well, and the recording. So that kind of brings us to the end of the evaluation ingredients for an ATE proposal, but don't go yet. Some general parting advice. Start early. Get feedback from 1 or 2 people that aren't too closely involved with your project. Lori told us about when she did our last proposal, she put it in front of our National Visiting Committee to get their advice. And she got it back and she had to completely reorganize the entire proposal to actually take their advice. So she was saying, I wish I would have given them an earlier version or an outline, because that would have saved her a lot of time. So start early and get it in front of somebody right away. We invite you to visit our resource library, evaluator directory. We have events, newsletters, past webinars. Before you go, you just sat through 45 minutes talking about evaluation. So please help us do our work better. The blue form is just our evaluate feedback form. If you could fill it out and then just put it in the back, that would be lovely.